I'll introduce myself. I'm really excited to have had the opportunity to speak after whiskey. In my background, my first startup was actually a clean tech water company where we used the byproduct of whiskey to decontaminate arsenic poison water in Bangladesh. And that was my first voyage into the world of entrepreneurialism. And for me, I really took note when someone said, is there a solution to jet lag? Before starting this company, I was actually with Palantir Technologies, and we were constantly flying. So 1 minute I'd be in San Francisco, hop on a plane. Next thing you know, I roll off the plane 5 a.m. I'm in London. There's no time. You have to pitch to CEO, and then hop, you're off again. And I was constantly searching for fuel. And for me, one of the most mind-numbing parts was I was in Maranello. We were pitching to C-suite at Ferrari. People there were wearing the coolest suits, and I wanted to be present. And I kept pinching myself under the table so I wouldn't fall asleep. And back then, it was pre-IPO, so we had carte blanche credit cards. We could buy anything we wanted, but nothing could keep me going. And so the yearning was for a product that not just tastes phenomenal, but really fuels human performance. We do have samples. I'm going to be saving that for when you hit that mid-afternoon slump and you desperately need a nap. And I'm also very grateful that Tiffany Bora is here because she is our scientific advisor and business development lead. So my job is to ensure that you are all fueled. Now, on that note, when we started Astrius, the idea of it was you created for those who are truly at the peak of human performance. We choose astronauts because they are not just as cognitively sharp as the best of the best. They also happen to have the methodical ability to do what a surgeon would do and the achievement physically of what an Olympian would do. And so to my sheer delight, my COO, Scott Parazynski, happens to be a NASA astronaut and an Olympian and a doctor. But really, the product has been optimized for the elite performer in all of us, which is everyone here, truly. So before I go into this, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what is space food and what does it mean when we say we are redefining the multi-sensory pleasure of food. So a lot of people think of space food as something, that's freeze-dried or boring, and the way most of it is cooked now, you have like a little pouch, you put in hot water, you mush it around, and there's no texture and there's no pleasure. But food is really, really very, very important to all of us and what it means to be a part of humanity. And it's not just what you think you're tasting in your mouth. It's a concoction of the brain. It's this multi-sensory approach where, in truth, flavor isn't exactly one note of your experience. It brings together all of the olfactory sensation, the physical touch, the sound, the audition. In fact, during COVID, how many of you sort of lost that ability to enjoy food? Did anyone get affected by that? So what really happens is 90% of what you perceive as taste is actually what you smell, and we can't smell properly. That hampers your ability to taste flavor, and this happens quite a lot in space. The good news is you don't really want to smell the ISS because it doesn't smell glorious. The bad news is you don't have that ability to pick up on the nuances of a delicious French meal. So instead, we use things like trigeminal stimulation. You have ways where it's like wasabi and curcumin, and a lot of people up in the ISS love just putting sriracha sauce and everything. It just kind of gives you that kick of heat. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more to flavor. We love that concept of nostalgia. How many of you watched Ratatouille back in the day? I love that scene where you have this curmudgeon, and next thing you know, he takes that bite of ratatouille and he's brought right back to childhood. So Marcel Proust calls food the best time machine. You eat it and instantly you're back there. Whether it was your first date and it was actually a good date and you remember it, or as a child, what your grandmother cooked for you. So for us, we really talk about pleasure. It's a brand of hedonics. Pleasure isn't just what brings you joy, but it's what gives you the levity and motivation in life. We had the opportunity to interview many, many astronauts, and they talked about food being something that brings you together. It's that camaraderie. It's how you break through the tension and stressors of your day. But in addition to that, different space agencies have different approaches to food. So JAXA really values the importance and critical need for a meal to bring you joy. And so when the food lab had requests, a lot of requests came for food from the Japanese Space Agency, but you must recall it has things like curcumin. It has other ways of creating food that kicks it up another notch. I'm a huge fan of Alain Mallet. He's the head of the French Space Agency's Department of Nutrition. And so they value the beauty of food and making it look glorious. Instead of pouches, they use cans. And while I am deeply, deeply motivated by the Francophile way of life, that's not how we are in North America. We care about function, efficiency. I will shovel down my meal staring at a laptop because how can I get through this fast to get on with work? So the aim of it was, can I create something that not just tastes formidable, but will enhance human performance? Chocolate by far was the most desired product. Vicky Cloris, we have the deep pleasure of saying she is on our board of directors. She served as the head of NASA Food Lab from 1986 to 2018. And she said, no matter who they were, where they were from, or what era, chocolate undoubtedly was the most desired food. And so what we've created is a high-functional chocolate truffle. It has within it all of your key micronutrients. So we went through the NASA Human Roadmap, looked at the micronutrient deficiency, so everything from vitamin D, B6, B12, folate, boom, there's COVID. Next thing you know, we all have these key micronutrient deficiencies. When you're pregnant, the doctor says take your folate. We forget about it after. Vitamin D. And in addition to that, we've also included nootropics and adaptogens. This essentially enables you to lift your brain fog, have cognitive focus, and ensure that you are on your game. So the product itself is made with 64% of Valrhona dark chocolate. Francophile here, it's the best chocolate you can have. We used algae oil. Interestingly, NASA does have a history with algae. Back in the day, they used algae to mimic the same fatty acids that are in breast milk. So now if you have baby formula, it has DHA and ARA. But for us, what was important is, how is this going to benefit those in space? We have successfully sent it to space. Kelly Girardi took it up in the Virgin Galactic flight. She's also a former Palantirian, or a former colleague of mine still with Palantir. And most recently, it went up through NASA's, it's on the ISS, it went up through SpaceX Crew 8. So really, it comes down to, how is this relevant to us on Earth? We talk about it as flowing your flow state. What does that mean? We had a chance to run some trials with various athletes. We looked at NCAA athletes. We had them wear a Garmin wristwatch, chest strap, go for a run. It was a 1-month study. And so this is really what leads us to the next chapter of what we're doing, precision nutrition. It's not just a product that is for everybody. We don't all fit in the same box. My health needs are very different from someone else's. And so what we did in our study is we looked at what your cadence, heartbeat, how the environment around you actually impacts your way of running. And what we found was, with a placebo, it didn't change from what their baseline was, but when they took Astrius, they had the ability to run faster. And one of them was a woman. She had a child. She was breastfeeding. Her child was 5 months old. She did much better on Astrius Ultra, which is all of your key micronutrients. We had a male runner who did a lot better on Astrius Energy. But in addition to that, not only is it a matter of how well you run, what's your cognitive focus? How many of you game? Do we have gamers here in this room? Anyone? A few gamers? So we actually had some tests with Helldivers 2 and Call of Duty. Turns out with Astrius, you have a better kill-to-death ratio. So for the non-gamers, they were able to kill more targets and die fewer times with Astrius and reach their objective in a shorter period of time. But for me, what brings me true levity is, how does this really enable those at peak performance? I know I have 1 minute, so what I will say is, we are now working with surgeons, in particular neurosurgeons. And so the collaboration really looks at, how can an astronaut thrive at their highest peak? And in turn, that cognitive sharpness, what applications does it have here on Earth? And so I'm here in this photo with one of the neurosurgeons who's doing AI, remote robotic surgery. And Astrius has also been quite beneficial. I'll leave it at that. Please come see me. We will have samples. I'm very excited to speak to all of you about how we can augment your human performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Questions, comments?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
Hi.
I have tried the product and it's delicious.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
I remember you, Jessica. I see you in person. Joy.
Okay. We have a few.
Thank you. Yes.
My understanding is that, I'm not a biologist, but I assume that being in space will upset their circadian rhythm. So does this help regulate that?
I love that you asked that. So the element I'm talking about, precision nutrition, is also looking at different demands. So one of them is sleep deprivation. Another one is your skin dries out a lot in space. We're also working at something, beauty from within. And beauty isn't just how you look, but also how you feel, skin elasticity, better hair. So the next aim of our work is really identifying core needs and how we can address that, but presenting it in the form of a delicious dark chocolate, having within it the nutraceuticals that are necessary to impact these needs. Absolutely. In fact, we do have in R&D right now something that is good for better sleep. Absolutely. Yes?
Yeah, so I can definitely confirm the amount of candy the astronauts eat on the space station. Like, they have Reese's peanut butter cups and Lindt chocolate and all this, way more than you would imagine from our direct observations of the galley. But I'm wondering if you've given any thought, not just to obviously there's thought about the presentation of this food and the nutrition of it, but to the social and cultural aspects of food in space and how that can improve life for the crew, like how can they prepare their own food? It's clear from our observations that they want to cook for each other and they can't. That's a thing that people like to do to show that they care about each other. So I'm just curious if you've thought about that.
I love that you asked that question. I wasn't able to cram everything into this presentation, but I was invited to give this talk by Dane Goebel, who actually led NASA Deep Space Food Challenge. And so we won phase 1 of the Deep Space Food Challenge. We didn't continue because our ultimate goal was not creating ingredients, but fast forwarding creating delicious food. And so for that, we had partnered up with Aleph Farms that does 3D printed meat. And our additive was, look, right now we know the way you cook is by putting hot water into a pouch. So let's take it one notch up. So we created the concept of a zero gravity sous vide. And essentially what that means is, sure, we can take some herbs and spices. When I started the company, we spoke with a 3-star Michelin chef. His name's Corey Lee. He leads Benu. And he came up with the idea of different sauces, different mixtures. So let's say you grow some herbs on the space station. I mean, I love lettuce, but only if I have something delicious to mix it into. So why not have menthol and chili pepper? You pick a few things in, put it in a pouch, have a pre-mixed blend, and then you seal it, you put it in a sous vide, and you can actually have great flavor. So whether the protein source is 3D printed meat or something sad that comes out of a can, let's turn that sad meal into something that's augmented. We spoke with Sian Proctor before she went up through SpaceX, and she talked to us about the joy of coming together for celebration meals and cooking together. I really believe there should be a chef on station. But if we don't have time for that, astronaut time is as important and precious as gold. So why not enable the means to cook, but really facilitating it to happen efficiently without taking away pleasure? And so for us, the core is pair pleasure with performance and have an amazing experience on space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.